Hey, welcome to tutorial number 3 on fall and dodge or fall and catch. What we want to code in for this tutorial are the multiple objects that are falling down, and we also want to show what happens when our lives reach 0. Right? We get this game over screen right here. So we will get right into it, and we'll jump on to where we left off last time. So we should have our score, our lives variable that are counting up and counting down. The only problem is right now if we get down to our lives at 0, it'll actually just start going negative on us, which is not what we want, right? We want to have a game over screen that comes up because no game really lets you go into negative lives. So we'll stop this and we'll reset it back. So our next sprite we're going to put in here is going to be a game over. We will go to our text and just make a big game over. Alright, now if you look at this on our viewing screen over here, it's not really that noticeable because of contrast. So I'm actually going to take this thing and with it highlighted here, we're going to just make it some kind of dark, I like a red color. Alright, I think that's a little bit more obvious as to what's going on. We'll have our game over pop up looking just like that. Alright, so in our code for this sprite, this is usually going to be hidden during gameplay, so when we start the game up, we're going to want to have this thing hidden, then show up when our lives reach 0. So we'll say for events, when this thing is clicked, we're going to hide it. Under looks, we'll say hide. And then we'll say, we'll make some condition for whenever our lives reach 0, show up. So we'll say forever, if, and we want to say our lives are going to be 0. Now, we may be thinking right now we want to have equals and say for when our lives equal 0, have game over show up. The only problem is if you have multiple objects in here, which we're going to look at in this tutorial, and they're falling down at a high rate of speed, there are often times when two objects will hit very, very close together, and it will increase the score, or I should say, if they're hitting the rabbit here, if they hit the rabbit at the same time, your lives may jump over 0 and actually go directly from 1 to -1, if that makes sense, right? 1 minus 2 would be -1. So we don't want to say equal 0. A good failsafe to have in here is if we use the less than, and if we say if our lives are less than 1, all right, meaning 0, -1, whatever it may be, then game over pops up, because it really doesn't matter if we have lives of 0 or -1. You lost the game either way. So if you have the equal sign in there and you wonder why sometimes your game over won't trigger, this could be one of the reasons. So we'll go into our variables here. We'll put lives and say when lives are less than 1, then we want game over to show up. So we'll say here for looks, and we're going to want to have show. And also if game over happens, we're going to want to have everything stop. So we'll put our stop all command right in here. All right, let's see how this goes. All right, and game over shows up and we're all set to go. All right, now what we're going to want to have is we just want to check and see what happens here. If you notice, there are times when you have to click this thing twice after the game over screen comes up. I don't know if you heard me clicking there or saw what happened, but you may run into this problem when you make your game, where you get game over, then I say, oh, game over, I want to start again, and you click it, and for some reason it doesn't register because I think it's still picking up that lives were less than 1. So what I like to do for this one, before we do this forever command right here, we can say when flag is checked, we'll give all the other codes and the other sprites, we'll give them time to reset themselves. And what I like to do here is just put in a wait command. No one's going to lose this game within the first second. Right? Even if there are 3 objects up here, you have 5 lives, it's going to take more than a second. And this gives a little bit of time for the other codes to reset themselves. Then we can start this forever. If lives are less than 1, show and stop all. Alright, so we'll try this again. We'll see if I have to click twice to reset the game after game over happens. Alright, game over. We'll see. All right, one click now starts it up. It just gives a little bit of time for lives and everything to reset before we show game over and stop all. All right, our next step and our last step in making the basics of this game is going to be duplicating these apples that are falling down. We have one of them coming down here, which is awesome, but we want to have multiple ones to make the game more interesting. So we'll duplicate once, we'll duplicate twice. I'm going to move around some of these things to keep all the apples together. So apple, we'll call this apple 1, apple 2, and apple 3. Right now they're all the exact same thing. All right, so they're all dropping down. This is what we want, but it's pretty boring when they all fall at the same rate. All right, you can see the rate changes a couple times when it actually hit the bunny, but we don't want these things to all fall at the same rate. So we're going to have to go into these individually and change them. Normally, for apple number 1, it's decreasing y by -5. So for number 2, I don't know, -6. For the other one, if I want to make it -4, I could, but we'll make it -7. Now, if you want to put decimals in here, that would be good as well. And this looks a little bit more like the games that we would be playing, right, as far as dodging. Right? We can add more of them in. In the next tutorials, we'll talk about more objects falling when we reach certain scores in the game, so it starts off easy and it gets more difficult as we go along. But for right now, this is pretty much all the basic elements of the game. All right, you see our scores are working. Let's just check our lives. Seem to be working. All right. And the reason why we waited so long to duplicate is so we had all of these variables in here for every single one of these apples, so we didn't have to add in if touching the rabbit for each one changed lives and pick the random spot. We can just do it now and wait till the end to duplicate everything, so we duplicate all the work that we've done.